Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is Bob Kingpin Eres along with Brian Cano, and we have a special guest today, and it's Tim Hagerty. Tim Hagerty not only is an author who's written this great book, Tales from the Dugout, and I really enjoyed this thing. I mean, I was going through it, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Tim is also, it's kind of interesting. Tim, you've been the not only the broadcaster, but the head of media relations for the El Paso Chihuahuas now for how many years?
Since the beginning of this team, first season was 2014, and I've been with the Padres Triple-A team since 2008, including when they were the Tucson Padres in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, where do they play then? Probably Tucson Electric Park or something
That's
like
right.
that,
Yeah, at
or
that time it had since been renamed Keno Stadium, but what was formerly known as Tucson Electric Park, exactly, from 11
yeah,
through
yeah.
13.
I remember that when the Diamondbacks played there. It was not a fun place to go because it was far from me, another 100 miles. But Tim, first of all, let's go ahead and talk about your book because I don't know what you would call it. I call it a bunch of factoids, right? Real things that have happened, real um, things out of the blue. I know one thing that I mentioned to Brian yesterday as I was reading it about one of the stadiums that half of it basically was in Texas and the other half was in Arkansas. And it's like, I never knew that. Right. So as I'm going through it, being a guy who loves baseball, I truly enjoyed the book. And this isn't only your first book, but we're going to talk about this book today. And uh, the research that went into this had to be incredible because just to compile all these stories.
Well, thank you. And it's been funny. That Texarkana story about the ballpark right on the state border does come up a lot.
Yeah.
Um, in the early 1900s in Texarkana, and Texarkana is a city right on the Texas-Arkansas line. There was a team named the Texarkana Casket Makers, and their ballpark was right there, straddling the state line. So the infield was in one state, the outfield was in the other. I'm trying to think of which one was which. I think the pitcher's mound and home plate was in Arkansas, and second base on was in Texas.
There
And the
wasn't a toll booth.
illustrators,
There wasn't a toll booth in between, right? I
that's
mean,
right, no toll booth.
Oh,
And
wow.
what I really wanted with the book was some illustrations as well. And I think that the publisher, HarperCollins, did a great job with the illustrations. And that one, you see a base runner sliding, and right behind second base, you see a big "Welcome to Texas" sign. I
yeah,
liked what they did with that
yeah.
illustration. I liked that one.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. But you must have some favorite stories in there as well. And what are some of your favorite little factoids that you really like?
Well, the one that took me the longest to research and the longest to pin down probably is one of my very few top favorites, and that is the fly ball that disappeared. In 1978, there was a Double-A Eastern League game, and there's some big names in this game. Ricky Henderson was playing for the home team, Jersey City. Wade Boggs was playing for the visiting team, Bristol, Connecticut. And a fly ball was hit to right field, and it vanished. It didn't land in the
Wow.
stands. It didn't land in the field. It didn't go over the fence. And I
Un
know this sounds crazy, but I communicated with players who were on the field, communicated with a fan who was in the stands. I got to email with Wade Boggs about this, and they all say that everyone just described it the same way. They just looked at each other in disbelief. Where did this ball go? And people have asked me when I talk about it on shows like yours, so do you really think the ball disappeared? And the reason I think that nobody truly knows what happened in the moment is because the umpires had to get together and they decided to give the batter a double. So to me, that shows me if the umpires basically had to wing it and make a decision, that shows there really wasn't a conclusion on what happened to this missing fly ball.
wow. What a
That
story. Hey, hi, Tim. It's Brian from the other half of the show, Brian Cano Sr. with Texano Media. Thanks for being on the show. Hey, Tim, let me ask, as a journalist, what story in particular stands out in the book to you?
Yeah, well, it's great to meet you, Brian and Kingpin. Great to talk to you guys. So thanks for having me. First off, um, that's a really good question when you introduce it journalistically, because there were times that the story maybe just didn't seem right, and I really had a decision to make. For example, in the 1890s, there was reportedly a Pennsylvania State League game in which a team ran out of bats. So the batter grabbed an axe because, of course, there's an axe in
Wow.
a professional baseball dugout in the 1890s. And and there's articles that this batter stepped in there, swung with the axe, hit the ball, split the ball in half, and that half of the baseball went over the fence. And the umpire said, "You get half of a run."
Oh, wow. Oh,
So
wow.
the three of us, we've watched a lot of baseball. This just doesn't add up.
Right.
That doesn't seem like something that would happen. But the story is so fun. I love the half of a run part. So journalistically, I had a decision to make. My gut was, I don't know about this story. I don't know if I can put this in the book. But in the end, what I did was I wrote reportedly, because there are
Reportedly.
newspaper articles about this. And I felt like that covered me, where I'm not saying that this 100% happened the way that the article says, but I'm saying
Right.
reportedly. There were reports that this happened.
That's so important, Tim, nowadays with journalists, being under the spotlight in some cases, to be that accurate and to cite your sources. It's reported, and I do the same thing. But let me ask, what about the jewelry payment? There was a team that was paid in jewelry. The Zarconias. What's that all about?
Yeah, that was the Toledo Avengers, I think, in the 1890s. The team could not meet payroll, so they gave players jewelry. And to me, this was really the fun part about the research. I went through newspaper archives. There was an old Spalding and Reach baseball guide every year. They produced that from the late 1800s into the early 1900s. That was a great thing to flip through, finding notes like that. I'd go through old baseball books. Um, I should mention a Sabre member named Al Arrighi in Maryland helped me with research. He's mentioned in the introduction to the book. He happens to be my uncle. He's retired, huge baseball fan, and he'd flip through baseball books that he received, see if he could find some fun minor league stories. I also went to the Baseball Hall of Fame Library in Cooperstown, which was a great resource. In addition to the Plaque Gallery and the great museum there in Cooperstown, they have the Giamatti Research Center. And it's really helpful because not only do they have publications that really aren't available anywhere else, but when you let them know what you're looking to do with enough advance notice, they actually have the books ready for you when you show up in the library. And that was really helpful. So um, I really tried to have a high threshold for what made it into the book. I tried to have a high bar. I'm sure over the years, people will tell me, hey, there's this story from the 1980s that um, wasn't in your book, but I like to think I got most of them.
No, that's
How long did it take you to put this book together? Because I mean, there's, as you say, there's 1,001 tales, right? How long did it take you to do all this research?
10 years. It
Yeah.
wasn't every day for 10 years, but it was an ongoing document for that long. In 2012, when I was researching something else, I came across this newspaper story of a Texas League game in 1888, and it got delayed when a wild bull ran on the field. And I thought, I've never heard this story. I broadcast minor league games for a living. I love baseball research, and I've never heard this story. So it taught me that there's just so many stories from the past and present of minor league baseball that a lot of sports fans didn't know about. So it was really that story that began this document for me, and that continued to add to it. I reached about 1,100 stories and thought, okay, what's the composition of this going to look like? What's the layout going to look like? How many stories do I need? And I looked at my wife's cookbook, and just as a complete coincidence, I saw the title was 1001 Recipes. And I like that, 1001. So I actually narrowed down from 1,100 to 1,001, put some on the cutting room floor. I would merge some to make room. For example, in 1907, there was a player who was arrested for swearing on the field. And
oh,
then in
wow.
1930, there was an umpire who was arrested for swearing on the field. Arrested, by the way, not ejected. And so those two stories became one. I merged them, and that was how I narrowed it down.
Well, I got a kick out of the Zirconias because, as ironic as it was, in 1800s there was, believe it or not, payroll issues that they had to contend with, very similar to what they deal with today in today's game. So I found that kind of ironic that the more things change, the more they stay the same in some cases. Tim, where can we find your book? Where is it available? Amazon.com, other places?
Yeah, right now it's available at a discount on Amazon. And again, it's Tales from the Dugout, 1001 Humorous, Inspirational, and Wild Anecdotes from minor league baseball. And it's also available wherever books are sold. Some bookstores have them in person, some don't. But the best bet is Amazon, as well as other online retailers if you prefer those.
Yep. And I got my book.
Yeah, man. No,
I ordered it one day and I got it the next.
Amazon.
So it was great.
Well,
Right
thank
from
you.
Amazon. Yeah.
No, appreciate that. And also, I just, we want to make sure we get that out. But at the same time, you've got over 2,200 games of covering baseball. You're in El Paso currently with the Chihuahuas. What's it like there in the community? What's it like being part of that organization? And what are they doing in efforts to increase engagement with the local community? Are they doing things?
Yeah, we're very lucky in El Paso. It's a passionate fan base. We have a beautiful stadium that's only 10 years old. Many games sell out. People who come through here, visiting players, umpires, scouts, many call it the best minor league ballpark that they've ever worked in. So we are very lucky here. It's downtown. It's really boosted downtown El Paso. Many more restaurants, office buildings have popped up in the last 10 years since the arrival of this stadium. And El Paso is a city where it's a big city. There's close to 700,000 people here, but it's also far away from other cities. So this is their team. Yes, there are some Rangers fans, some Dodgers fans, some Diamondbacks fans here, but people really get into the wins and losses here, which makes it special as the broadcaster because people are following what we're doing very closely.
That makes a lot of sense. Around the valley, we're very fortunate to have the D-backs here. But let me ask, as it relates to the Chihuahuas, they have a direct link to the San Diego Padres, NL West division rivalry we have with the Padres. What do you know about some players up and coming that D-backs may be encountering? Maybe not this season, but maybe next season. You know anybody that we can that you can name off the top of your head?
Yeah, there's a lot. In the course of a season, there's about 25 different players from the El Paso Chihuahuas that will play with the major league team that year. So really in AAA, you're getting that constant up and down shuttle. And it's not always the players who are mentioned on the top prospect lists. For example, we had a left-handed pitcher here last year, Tom Cosgrove. Came to El Paso again this year. The start of the season, great. Got called to the majors, and he's become a go-to guy in the Padres bullpen. He's got an ERA below 2. He set a Padres record for most consecutive scoreless appearances to begin a Padres career. So to me, that's what I love about AAA. We see the top prospects, but also maybe some unexpected guys that go up and play in the major leagues. For example, Matthew Batten, he's an infielder with the Padres. He's from Connecticut, played at Quinnipiac in Connecticut. He's from a cold weather state. He's not from a big baseball school. He was selected in the 30-something round. Literally more than 1,000 players were taken before him. Kept on playing well in the minor leagues, was with El Paso parts of 5 years. And the past 2 years has been up and down with the Padres in the majors. And 20 years from now, will casual baseball fans remember his name? Will he be Major League All-Star? Probably not, although maybe. But he's in the encyclopedia. Against a lot of odds against him, he made it to the majors. He's got a bold baseball reference page, as they say, and that lives forever.
That's a cool story. Thanks for sharing that, Tim.
We had a guy here too who was drafted in later rounds. Of course, he doesn't play with the Diamondbacks anymore, but the name of Paul Goldschmidt, who of course turned out to be an MVP. And the minute he came up, and I don't even think he played a day in AAA baseball. I think he went directly from AA.
Yeah, he came straight from Mobile, and that was I was the broadcaster for that team before that, but pretty close before that. 2007, I was the broadcaster for Mobile, and they were the Diamondbacks AA team. And you guys want to check out a minor league roster of some players that have turned out to major league stars. On that team, you had Carlos Gonzalez, a batting champion, Justin Upton, a major league all-star, Max Scherzer, pitched for Mobile that year, multiple Cy Young awards. I'm forgetting some, but Mark Reynolds, who played a long time in the majors, hit a lot of home runs. Emilio Bonifacio, who had a decade in the majors, all on that one team. Brett Butler was the manager. Brett had some health issues late in the season. Matt Williams took over as the manager. I reconnected with him at Padres spring training this year, talking to him for the first time in, what would it be, 15 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was really a fun time. because of that, I've always kept a close eye on the Diamondbacks. I follow the Padres closer because of my job now, but
Right.
everyone there treated me so well. The broadcasters, Jeff Munn and Greg
Yep.
Schulte, Tom
No money.
Candiotti,
Yep.
Leo Gilmartin on the radio side,
Yep.
Scott Geyer, who oversees that.
Yep.
They actually
No.
gave me this opportunity to broadcast a Diamondbacks minor league report that I would host once every month, and they'd air it on the Diamondbacks radio network around the state, which was a great thrill.
Yep. Know all the guys you're talking about, and we'll probably see them tonight. Um, Let me ask you one question, because we're going to be getting deep into the Arizona Fall League, which is a great league where you do see the prospects and the guys from not only Double A but Triple A that are going to be in Major League Baseball within the next year or two. Who do you see from your organization that we should keep an eye on when we're out at those games?
Yeah, I love the Arizona Fall League. My first season broadcasting was with Idaho Falls, a short season team, and I went down and worked in the Arizona Fall League after that because my job with Idaho Falls was not a year-round position. So went down there, worked for Steve Cobb, who has since retired, but loved going there. Would drive from the Arizona Fall League office in Phoenix, went out to Peoria, Mesa, all those great ballparks.
Yep.
And I'm curious to see who ends up from the Padres organization on those Arizona Fall League rosters.
Right. That hasn't come out yet, right? They haven't
No,
selected who's going to
I
be
want
on
to say
those
that's coming
teams.
soon, but
Yeah.
yeah, typically it's late in the Triple A season that we find out. And it's interesting. Sometimes, in addition to the prospects, maybe if there was a player that had an injury that they wanted to give some additional at bats to, I think about somebody like Eggy Rosario, who's currently with El Paso, who actually already did make his major league debut, but he hasn't played much this year because of a leg injury he sustained in the Dominican Republic over the winter before a game. Um, Sometimes players like that, when the major league team wants to get them more at bats, could send them to the fall league.
Yeah, I enjoy the fall league. It's nice. The weather's nice. The baseball is solid. I really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to it. Both Bob and I, we do plan to extensively cover that this fall. Let me ask. We were talking about the D-backs. Bob and I have been talking about some of the deficiencies, and we've narrowed it down to the hitting. The New York Yankees recently they made a change in their hitting coach. As far as what I can tell, the D-backs are in need of some changes. Would it be beyond a team to let the hitting coach go to not only make a difference in the way things are moving, but to make a change in hitting philosophy during the middle of the season? Would that be unheard of?
For a team to fire their hitting coach during a season, not unheard of. Like you mentioned, the Yankees recently did that. It seems like more often that would come with a managerial change where a new group of coaches comes in with the new manager. I know in some cases the San Diego Padres, without changing managers, there have been decisions that were made during the fall regarding changing hitting coaches. San Diego has had hitting coach changes during the season. I remember, for example, back in 2009, the Padres Triple-A manager at the time was Randy Reddy, and he went up and became the major league hitting coach when they let go of, I think, Jim Lefevre, maybe was the hitting coach at that time. So, yeah, not unheard of. And, that's the hard part about being a major league pitching coach or hitting coach is when there's sort of some struggles, things heat up for you. There's a lot of attention on you. And as you guys know, at the beginning of the season when the Diamondbacks were hitting great, those type of questions weren't being asked when they were winning so many games. But
That's right.
unfortunately, that's the nature of having on a major league coaching uniform. There's a lot of scrutiny on you.
Oh no, no question about it.
In some ways, I've thought, I think a manager wouldn't say this publicly, but in some ways, it might be easier to be the manager of the Oakland A's, where there's not a lot expected of you. Where if you're in last place, that was kind of expected this year. But then if you win a little more than you thought, you're looking good. I know that the managers and the coaches, they put on the uniform, they want to compete. They don't think that way, but you guys know what I mean.
Right.
When there's not much expectations,
Yeah.
there's a little bit less pressure.
Right. And I think you nailed it right there. Diamondbacks weren't expected to be really anywhere this year. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Bob Nightingale, and I've talked to him almost daily because he's at our stadium all the time. And we were walking in one day, and I said, Bob, what do you think? What do you think the Diamondbacks will actually be this year? And I said, I personally think they're a year away. And Bob said, yeah, I agree with you. Of course, we're both shocked the way that they played the first half of the season. And now that we, even as media, have had a taste of winning, and now they're losing, and they're the water is the level is starting to come down to where it should be. I picked them myself fourth overall in that division. I picked them. Well, of course, everybody was picking the Padres as number one, and we know what's happened with the Padres this year. You know, and then I had Dodgers, Giants, and then the Diamondbacks. Colorado is not very good, but I think you hit it right there. Is when we got a taste of winning, we wanted to see more.
Yeah, no. Hey, look, just real quick, I want to drill down on what I said too as well, because I noticed that when Alec Thomas was sent to the minors to Reno, he went there for a specific reason. It was to slow his feet down so he could become a little more stabilized in his swing, get that lead foot down, and maybe make the swing a little more compact. And when he came back there to the D-backs, he had made significant strides in that regard, and it was even noticeable. Some of the broadcasters had mentioned it. But lately, he's kind of back to his old ways again. Feet are moving. He's getting away from the ball. It's getting hard to hit that outside pitch, not getting the meat of the bat on the ball. And I have a sneaky suspicion that it's some of the training that's not being done here in Phoenix that was being done in Reno. Can a hitting coach make that much of a difference to him, where they can bring their philosophy that sticks and the guys don't necessarily lose it over the course of a handful of games?
Well, you guys watch the Diamondbacks much more than me, so I wouldn't be able to know about any particular player and that particular coach's instruction. But I do think in general that small mechanical adjustments for a pitcher or a hitter can make a big difference. I remember, this is a long time ago now, but do you remember Jose Bautista for years was sort of an up and down AAA guy? He'd fill in the majors, he'd play a dozen games, then he'd get sent back down. And then they talked about the way he lifted up his front foot higher, had a taller stride, and generated more power, and all of a sudden he's leading the American League in home runs. Hitting is so hard, and some of the traits are so specific. That pitch is moving so fast that, a small mechanical adjustment of where a batter's hands start or how much his feet are or are not moving can make a huge difference. We see that with even established major leaguers when they're on a hot streak. They talk about how it's just like mindless, how they're not thinking about anything mechanically. They're not thinking about where their hands are, where their feet are. It's really when you struggle a little bit that you try to figure something out, that you deal with those mechanical issues. And I think that organizations do a good job of making sure that everyone's on the same page. I've heard about different organizations that actually have a file where they say, okay, Brian Cano, he's entering spring training. Here's what we expect out of him. And everyone has access to that file. The major league coaching staff, the roving instructors, his minor league manager and coaches, because you don't want to tell a player to do something in AAA, go to the majors, and then be instructed to do something else. So I think being on the same page is really what it seems like organizations strive for, including the player. I know that some organizations will talk to players about what they expect out of them. They'll say to a pitcher, okay, this year we want you to be a reliever, not a starter. And when the player knows that in advance, it's a lot easier than just one person suggesting that in July.
All right. And before we go on for probably your last topic, Brian, that I know you wanted to touch upon, let's of course tell the viewers and listeners again where they can get your book.
Thank you. Again, it's called Tales from the Dugout, 1001 Humorous, Inspirational, and Wild Anecdotes from Minor League Baseball. It has a bunch of short, quick, fun stories and a lot of illustrations. And it's available on Amazon right now at a discount, and also available in many bookstores. And there's present stories. There's also some past stories, like your Phoenix listeners might want to hear about Bird Lynn. This guy got arrested during a game in 1915 in El Paso for breaking the umpire's toe. He was so upset about a ninth inning call that he threw his bat. It hit the umpire in the foot, and it broke his toe, and he got brought to jail for that.
Well, I'll have to look up Mr. Lynn for sure. That's a good one. 1915. Awesome.
Well, we might.
Yeah, that was a fun thing to learn. Was
yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
As you guys know, the Diamondbacks, of course, joining in 1998 and the Phoenix Firebirds
Right.
prior to that. But it was fun to learn just how much deep baseball history Phoenix has
Oh yeah.
in the early 1900s too.
Well, I'm a native Phoenician here. I was one of the last ones, and I remember the Phoenix Giants. So, with that being said, we got about 10 minutes left on the show here, Tim. But I wanted to just ask you a quick question. Actually, just get your thoughts on Kevin Brown, the announcer for the Baltimore Orioles, who this morning reportedly is going to be back to work. However, the Athletic cited unconfirmed sources that he was taken off the air for his comments that he made on MASN TV on a broadcast on July 23rd. I don't know, something to, or they, I don't know, I'm not sure when the broadcast was. I should have done a little more research, but at the end of the day, what are your thoughts on the whole? Do you know anything about it? First of all, Tim, are you up to speed on that?
I also read the article in The Athletic, and I did not see the video, but from what I understand, it was a TV segment talking about how the Orioles have won more games against the Tampa Bay Rays this year than they have in X number of years in the past. Basically, they're playing a lot better against Tampa Bay, and they're playing a lot better against everybody. I mean, to me, the Orioles are one of the best stories in baseball. Talk about predictions. Who would have thought they'd be in first place in August?
Nope.
So yeah, I read the article in The Athletic, and in my opinion, as a sportscaster, it's a little bit frustrating that an announcer would be benched for relaying a fact about that series.
Yeah, no,
right.
I don't see how that presents the team in any bad light at all. If anything, he's saying, look at how well they're playing against this excellent Tampa Bay team. You know, sometimes as an announcer, I really stay away from criticism, but maybe some ways you think about, could I have phrased that better?
right.
I would guess that Kevin Brown on his drive home that day did not think anything about that. I don't even see how anyone would construe that as a negative thing. So,
you know, Tim, that's why I'm glad I asked you, because Michael Kay did come to Kevin Brown's defense yesterday, and I think he, you know, the Yes Network's Michael Kay, but at the same time, I think that it's important to recognize that you know, First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, and overreach sometimes can impact even you know, Major League Baseball in this instance. And I also feel that his remarks were harmless. I watched the video myself, and he was exactly stating the facts, and he was actually referring to a graph that was more than likely not produced by him. You know, some of these companies have teams where I don't. I make my own graphs, but he was just doing his work, and at the same and to hear that the Orioles were concerned about them, I guess what I reported was made them look cheap. It made them look like they were cheap. I'm not really sure how they got to that point, but I was happy to read this morning that he's going to be back to work. So I'm glad that you were able to, you know, to answer that question candidly, because I was impacted by that decision that the Orioles had made, and I was going to write something about it, but I'm glad I didn't, because it has been reversed. So thanks for being so candid with that.
Yeah, Kevin is an excellent sportscaster. I haven't met him in person. We've swapped Twitter messages years ago, but it's interesting, you know, shows like yours, you guys will talk about sports. Maybe sometimes you have different viewpoints. You listen to the differing viewpoint. You go back and forth. On this one, I don't see any differing viewpoints. This seems unanimous that if this is the true reason why an announcer was put on the bench, I think it makes the organization look bad.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. All right. You want to wrap it there, buddy?
Well, Bob, I like the way you do it, man. I mean, you're the guy. You want me to do it? I think let's have Bob do it. I'm good with that. Tim, before we do go, thanks for your time. I'm looking forward to going down to El Paso. Bob and I are going to take a road trip, I think, one of these days. Hopefully, come and see you guys over there. And
we'll be contacting you. That's
down the road, for sure. So thanks for your time, Tim. And Bob's going to wrap it up here. But anytime, we'd love to have you again on the show. We got to call in. We do the podcast every Monday at 3:00. Or thereabouts, and we'd love to have you again. So thanks for doing it.
Well, it's great to meet you both, and thanks so much for having me.
And before we go, I'm going to show this book again because I love it. And tonight, Brian, I will give this to you in the press box so you can read it.
Thank you.
unless you want to buy your own copy.
I'm gonna get
And
my own
then we
copy,
get-
but I want to read
and
yours
then-
first.
and
Yeah, buy your
and
own,
that-
Brian.
buy your own, and then that way we get it autographed when we go down to El Paso.
Oh, you know it, man. I love
All
it.
right.
That's a plan.
Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us, Tim. And this is Bob Eres for Brian Cano, and I'm going to say Tim Hagerty as well. Take care, everybody. See you next week on D-Backs Weekly, Inside the Game.